Hi guys, my name's Michelle Vinicurve. I am a blogger of my own blog series called The World of Autism, and one of the things I've been doing is my very own guest interview series featuring individuals with autism to families to professionals who work with individuals with autism. So my guest on here today is Mary. How are you, Mary?
I'm good, thank you. What an honor and a privilege to join you today.
I'm so glad to hear that. So we're gonna start off by letting you introduce yourself a bit about like your experience, your own experiences growing up with autism and where you're at today.
Um, I guess basically I grew up in a small town, so I grew up with about 200 kids in a whole school. I didn't grow up with a whole lot of kids. I was an athlete and did different things, worked on farms and stuff. I spent a good share of my schooling uh, playing sports and in outside of school as well playing sports. Academically, I was not very good. Um, I struggled a lot with reading and comprehending and being able to do what the teachers asked me to do, I guess, because it made no sense to me and stuff. So um, growing up was school wise when it came to learning was real difficult, and I was raised with all brothers, so I spent my time defending myself. Also, I was bullied throughout high school and stuff, so I was kind of a 99% tomboy. I liked playing football. I could play basketball. I could play softball, baseball. I was the only girl that played on the baseball team, so and before we had softball, so um, kind of kind of different. I went from high school to the military, so I'm just going from one extreme to another and just not really being able to find myself. So it's been an interesting 53 years.
Hmm. And yet today, like you have your own family and everything, correct?
Yes, ma'am. I have three boys of my own. What comes around goes around, right? I have a 31-year-old son that lives in Omaha, Nebraska, and then I have a 22-year-old and an 18-year-old that's a senior in high school, as well as my husband. My three boys, myself, are diagnosed on the spectrum, and we have a lot of similarities with my husband and stuff. So, he's not diagnosed, but he fits in pretty well. So we just kind of treat him as one of the group. uh,
And I'm sure that your husband's been like very understanding and accepting with just like with you and with your kids as well.
yes, ma'am.
I'm sure. And about with your experiences growing up like with sports, that was me also. Like where um I did a lot of sports too. Academically wise in the beginning, especially in my elementary school years, middle school, I struggled with reading comprehension too. You have no idea. Like I
Yeah, I do.
yeah, I was like I was pulled out a lot for reading because I struggled with it really bad and like my reading comprehension was like super low. So like I was always pulled out to get extra support for that. But with sports I was always very good at. Like out of my siblings, I'm the athletic one in my family. So like I went from doing like a tiny bit of soccer, but it wasn't really into it that much to where it was gymnastics, which I loved gymnastics. That was like one of my favorites. Getting to do like the balance beam to like cartwheels and like rolls and everything. It was always fun with that. To taekwondo, which taekwondo for me, that was my longest interest sport. And I did get my black belt when I was 10 years old. So it was quite interesting with that. And that turned out to be my favorite sport of all time. And I'm still like active today where I'm like doing like things like kickboxing to like any sports like that that's kind of related in the way that I kept up with. So, but yeah, that's very interesting. I in some ways like there are some experiences that for me going through that with you too. So I
Yeah.
relate on that. And so I also know about with you that you have some books that you've published about. You want to share some of your books that you've been an author of?
Actually, I didn't realize you could consider an ebook being an author, but I wrote an ebook about 6 years ago about autism in the workplace,
Mhm.
which garnered probably about 2,700 people. I did some WebExes and stuff with Walmart on the topic of autism in the workplace.
Mhm.
Uh, that garnered some really good in feedback as well as I think gave my management team at the time a whole new level of respect. Um, it doesn't. It was kind of a quiet respect, not a loud respect, because I'm not a type of person that likes to toot my own horn, because I just figured my actions should speak louder than my words, and that's how I train people too. And then just September 26th of this year, I launched my book From the Inside Out. It's about my being autistic and the journey of working in retail with Walmart. And so that was something I never dreamed would ever happen. So it's been a blessing. It kind of has put my name out there a lot farther than I ever realized. I believe it's international. I've had some friends in England and stuff purchase it, and so yeah, that's extremely exciting for me. Again, I tend to keep it in perspective, and I'm not a loud person. My mentor is trying to get me to at least raise my voice to a point where I can be heard. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. And I just did a book signing um, on Saturday, so that was interesting for me. And so yeah, I'm working on some different angles now. So yeah, that's those are the two books I have out. I'm currently in the middle of finishing up a chapter for another book, so I'm working on a collaborative effort there. And then I've already started typing a second book to um, either go along with or answer more questions for my first book. So
That's awesome. That is so cool. And you said that all your books are online. Is it through Amazon, right? Or
yeah, the ebook, I have an actual link for that goes through PayHip. Um, that one is that way, and then my From the Inside Out is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, as well as some international links that they can link into too as well. So yeah.
that is so cool. That is very cool. You are getting yourself out there, and that's phenomenal. Like you're, especially that I also like too, like you're also sharing also the experiences too, which a very important topic is about with employment, because that was always something like everyone in the community like that's like a big thing that where the unemployment rate of for those living with autism has skyrocketed.
Mhm.
Just getting
Yeah,
to access like the resources is just so important.
yeah, and I think we need to realize too, with the autism in the workplace, it's getting more and more prevalent. But also, I think there's more knowledge out there now where if there's an autistic person that is tech savvy, they can do exactly what you're doing. And then there are coaches and stuff like myself that can work with kids, and it doesn't have to be retail. I mean, I've seen moms create online stores for kids and stuff, but I think there's a stigma there that just because we don't make eye contact or anything like that, oh, they're not going to be any good at what they do. So they're coming in with a preconceived notion of what people need to look like, as opposed to the ability within the person.
Oh, you're absolutely correct. You are absolutely correct because that was something that I actually speaking of that, I actually talked about that once in a because I'm a panelist for a weekly webinar series called Ask an Autistic. And that was actually one of the questions that we were asked about how the importance about with eye contact. And that's not some it's always something that like that was like a big like expectation and stuff that that should be forced, but I feel like that eye contact is something that shouldn't be forced, and that anybody could still is capable of doing things just because they're not looking directly at you and stuff. They're still listening, people are still listening and like doing what they need to do. They're still living up to the expectations and stuff of what they feel they should do. So I definitely agree with you about that. I do. I do. And another thing I feel like that happens a lot, and I could tell from my own experiences too, which comes about with job interviews where the way that like I know that this was always a hard thing for me. I don't know if you ever felt this way about it, but with job interviews about how wordy questions get, and that like hinders so much like of a chance to like even like share about like what what a person really is capable of doing.
Right. And I think with job interviews, okay, if you can get past the initial one, that's cool because, but if you read my book, working with a big corporation and trying to get promoted within, then not only do you have the one to just apply for the job, but then they do interviews specifically for different job codes within. Can I have the notes? Can I study? Because I finally, after 17 times of trying to get promoted, I started saying at the end of all my interviews that if what I do on the sales floor or on the front end as a cashier and stuff isn't good enough for you, then for me to sit here and tell you everything is definitely not going to be good enough because again, I'm an action speaks louder than words, you know, because mentally I'm not necessarily thinking, I'm just reacting because that's how I've been taught. I'm a reactor as opposed to a person that's going to sit there and listen to every step you have. You know, if I'm learning the cashier, put me on the cash register. Let me do it because um, I can't learn by watching. I have to do it. I'm a doer.
You're absolutely right about that. Actions really do speak louder than words. Like showing and doing it. Like not just like verbally saying things. You have to actually like yeah, like I know for me, I have to see and do it. I do. That's like my way of like learning things in general, besides like things that go on at work. It's just, I feel like it's a commonality a lot. That's just the way that like what we think and stuff. And like if someone's telling me something verbal, that's not gonna help at all. No offense.
No, no.
But that's not how it works in like for what we think and stuff. So there brings that valid point to anybody that brings in a that has an employee that's an individual with autism. Just know that like it's about with showing and doing, not with just verbally telling them what's expected, because that's not enough. That is not enough at all. So that's my point with that. And also, Mary, I wanted to ask you about this about that you have a website, I believe. I wrote it down. It's called what was it called? Awesome Angels of yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
Your website.
that's a mouthful. Eventually, I might have to revise that when I finally finally get my stuff in place for that. It's awesome angels awareness and inclusion. Actually, the easiest way to get to my website with that is it has a hashtag including everyone. Um, it takes you right to the Awesome Angels Awareness and Inclusion. Um, there, I've put a lot of the stuff from my book on there. I did a post about my son that works at Sam's Club on at 22 years old. He told his club manager no. It's an interesting read because I learned something valuable from my son. Um, it has all kinds of family pictures. It has a few of my blog posts. I've been trying to cycle back through and do some different blog posts because I got a lot of blog posts throughout my book in time, but I'm in the process of updating a few more. But I try to do it about every other month because if I try to do it every month, it just entangles with everything that I've got going on. And so, but yeah, it's Awesome Angels Awareness and Inclusion. Right now, it's just an S corp as a business currently, but we're working on the nonprofit status for that. So yeah, it's a beautiful website. My website designer is amazing, and so I can't. Um, yeah, it's just one of those you need to go check it out because again, you know, seeing is believing or reading is more telling than what I can sit here and tell you all day, but I'm not going to sit here. I'm not that kind. Again, I'm not that kind of person. I'm not going to toot my own horn. I'm going to let my actions speak for you and be able to include everyone.
Yes, you're absolutely right about that. The importance of inclusion is just so like it's very, very important because it allows for everybody to be involved in the community, you know, no matter like who you are. It's just so important. It really is important. I like that's one of the big ways for you with promoting inclusion through with your website. That's awesome. Very cool.
Thank you.
So we are going to wrap this up here, but before that we do so, there's one thing that I always let all my guests share is about with any advice, especially from your perspective about with for you it would be like what advice would you give to any parents that have children with autism? What would your advice be? And from your own perspective too.
I think as not just a parent, not just a person as an autistic person, or just a person in general. I think coming from being in a leadership position, I think parents need to understand that before they jump right into trying to get their children a position or something, is take a step back and learn your kids a little more about maybe what they would be interested. I don't suggest you force them into anything. I think you got to find what your kids are able to do, and if you find something that they excel at, then you work towards doing your prepping for a job interview or stuff like that. And I think as the kids get older, like I said, I learned from my 22-year-old son how to say no. You know, if if they're offended or anything within what they're doing, just make sure they know how to say no and stand by it. You know, it's okay to say no because too many times things are thrown at us and we don't understand it. And so to give yourself an opportunity to understand is your best interest. You've got somebody or a job coach or like my youngest son's getting ready to go through voc rehab. If you have people that will work with them and teach them and find their niche and not just throw them anywhere because I think in the long run that would scar somebody if they're not able to do like I did throughout my book. Um, I think they have to be present in what they do, be able to
Mhm.
to be willing to jump in there and do what they need to do. And just be them. There's nothing wrong with being you. Whether it's weird and quirky, hey, you know what? I make people laugh just by walking in the front door because more than likely, at this point in time, I have my mask on upside down. So They do crazy things like that, you know. Um, and they don't necessarily have to fit in, but I think if they do find a position, find that one person that they can go to. They have to be a go-to person, even if their job coach is there, just to have somebody within the company to be able to relate to them.
Exactly. Exactly. When it comes to like in the jobs, like just find someone that is empathetic. Like they got you have to make sure this person like really gets you. As much as you're like for parents, like you have to know your child well. Like you gotta pay attention because there are things that you can learn from them that they learn from you back and forth. So that and that's a very valid point right there that you brought on a lot because everyone learns from each other. We really do. We really
You,
learn from each other.
yeah,
That's that.
you have to be able to be not just learn, but you have to be willing. You have to be open. And I think again, there's a stigma with the autistic community that even though they're working with people, you're different. I don't want to associate with you. That, they have to feel comfortable. They have to have that one person or two, you know. And sometimes you'll see two people, like I have that, two people will come to your employment that are both autistic because they feed off each other, but they're both very good at what they do. So if one doesn't understand it, the other one does. And then you got me in the middle who's going, okay, I just learned something today, I'm out. So, you know, so it's good to have somebody that genuinely cares about where they're going. So,
Exactly. Very true. Very true. Mary, thank you so much for coming on to share about you, about yourself and your story. Thank you.
thank you. I appreciate the time.